Senegal has decided to suspend all extraditions to France, accusing Paris of refusing to cooperate. Senegalese Justice Minister Yassine Fall made the announcement in an address to Parliament on Thursday. She said Dakar has been unsuccessfully requesting the extradition of two Senegalese nationals currently in France. As a result, Senegal will refuse to extradite 12 people wanted by France until it receives a favorable response from Paris.
This week, Senegal made a decision that could quietly reshape its relationship with France. The government announced that it is suspending all extraditions to Paris, accusing French authorities of refusing to return Senegalese citizens wanted back home. On paper, it sounds like a technical legal dispute between two justice systems. In reality, it is anything but. At the center of this standoff are delayed court rulings in France, a powerful Senegalese media figure who fled to Paris, and a new government in Dakar that no longer wants to be treated as a junior partner by its former colonial ruler. What began as a disagreement over court files has now become a test of sovereignty, fairness, and political will. Why is France hesitating? Why is Senegal drawing such a hard line now? And what does this tell us about how power is shifting in post-colonial Africa? Let's find out. On Thursday, December 11th, inside Senegal's National Assembly in Dakar, Justice Minister Yassine Fall stood up and said something that instantly changed the tone of Senegal's relationship with France. Senegal, she told lawmakers, has decided to suspend all extraditions to Paris. Not review them, not delay them. Suspend them. The words landed hard because extradition is one of the most sensitive forms of cooperation between states. It is built on trust that the other side's courts are fair, that requests are taken seriously, and that justice is mutual. By suspending it, Senegal was saying that trust is now broken. Fall explained why. Two Senegalese nationals are currently in France. Both are wanted by Senegalese authorities. Dakar has submitted formal requests, legal justifications, and supporting documents. And yet, she said, France has not returned them. The message from Dakar was blunt. We have done our part, but Paris has not done its own. In the minister's words, Senegal continues to request their extradition, but France remains unresponsive. What made this moment more striking was what came next. Fall announced that Senegal would now refuse to extradite 12 people wanted by France. These are individuals France is seeking under its own legal processes, but Dakar will no longer cooperate, at least not until France changes its position. This was not framed as revenge. It was framed as reciprocity. If cooperation is not equal, Senegal sees no reason to keep playing its part alone. Then came the line that revealed how personal this had become. If these people are guilty of crimes, we arrest them. We do not do as France does. We do not let them remain free. It was a sharp contrast. Senegal, she implied, does not shield suspects when they are wanted. France, in Dakar's view, is doing exactly that. This was more than legal frustration. It was an accusation of double standards. For decades, Senegal and France have maintained close ties, especially under former President Macky Sall, who was considered one of Paris's most reliable allies in West Africa. Extradition between the two countries had rarely caused public drama. Requests were processed quietly. Courts talked to courts. Diplomats stayed in the background. But this time, Dakar chose to make it public, political, and firm. The decision was announced in Parliament, in front of cameras, with words chosen to be heard. And that is what makes this moment different. Senegal is not just complaining about a slow court process. It is using the strongest legal tool it has, suspension of cooperation, to force a response from France. It is telling Paris that the old habit of patience is over. But behind this bold move is a deeper story. Senegal is not reacting to abstract delays. It is reacting to specific cases, specific people, and one name in particular that has turned a legal disagreement into a political flashpoint. So, who is the man whose case pushed Dakar to finally draw this line? The man whose case pushed Senegal to the edge is Diagne, a powerful media owner, a well-known voice in Senegalese politics, and a sharp critic of the current government in Dakar. In late September, Senegalese authorities issued an arrest warrant against him over alleged financial irregularities. Instead of facing investigators at home, Diagne left the country and resurfaced in France. Almost immediately, Dakar sent a formal request asking Paris to extradite him to Senegal. At first, there was no clear answer. Then, in late November, a French appeals court responded, not with approval, but with hesitation. The court postponed its decision and asked Senegal for additional details about the case. More documents, more clarification, more explanation. Legally, this is allowed. French judges are not bound to act quickly, and extradition cases can take time. But politically, the delay landed like a slap in Dakar. From Senegal's perspective, the message seemed clear. A man wanted by Senegalese justice, accused of financial wrongdoing, was now free in France, while his home country waited. For the new leadership in Dakar, this did not look like neutral legal caution. It looked like a shelter. Diagne is not an ordinary suspect. He owns media outlets and has long positioned himself as a critic of those in power. His supporters argue that the charges against him are politically motivated. The government, on the other hand, insists the case is about financial crimes and accountability, not silencing dissent. France's hesitation placed it directly in the middle of that argument, whether Paris wanted it or not. For many in Senegal, the optics were damaging. A former colonial power now appeared to be offering refuge to a government critic, while questioning the credibility of Senegal's legal system. Even without France saying it openly, the delay itself was enough to fuel suspicion. If this were a French citizen wanted in Senegal, people asked, would Paris wait so long? And Diagne is only part of the picture. Senegal is also seeking the extradition of another businessman under investigation for financial irregularities. Together, these cases form the core of Dakar's complaint. Two Senegalese citizens, both wanted, both in France, both not returned. That is what Justice Minister Yassine Fall was referring to when she told Parliament that France has not responded favorably to Senegal's requests. This is why Dakar chose escalation. By suspending extraditions and freezing French requests, Senegal is trying to force Paris to treat its cases with urgency. It is not subtle pressure, it is open leverage. But Diagne's case did something else too. It didn't just strain relations with France, it shook Senegal itself, because once his name entered the headlines, the fight over extradition spilled out of courtrooms and into newsrooms, streets, and political debate at home. And that is where the story took an even sharper turn. So how did this legal battle turn into a crisis over press freedom inside Senegal itself? It turned into a crisis at home the moment journalists got involved. After Madiambal Diagne fled to France, two Senegalese journalists conducted separate interviews with him. They spoke to him as a media figure, as a political actor, as a man at the center of a growing controversy. Days later, in October, both journalists were arrested by Senegalese authorities. No long explanations, no subtle warnings, just arrests. The reaction was immediate. Press unions, opposition figures, and civil society groups raised the alarm. They said this was no longer about financial investigations. This was about silencing voices, about sending a message to anyone who dared to give a platform to a government critic. Headlines spoke of an attack on freedom of expression. Radio debates heated up. Social media is filled with anger. In a country that has long prided itself on relative media openness in West Africa, this felt like a dangerous line being crossed. Within a week, both journalists were released. The government did not push the cases further, but the damage was already done. The Diagne affair was now emotionally charged. It was no longer just a legal file sitting on a judge's desk. It had become a symbol of a broader struggle: power versus dissent, authority versus free speech. And that changed how France's role was seen back in Dakar. Before, the extradition delay could be framed as a slow legal procedure. Now, in this tense atmosphere, it looked different. Many Senegalese began to see France as a haven for a man whose voice was shaking the government at home. Whether or not that was Paris's intention, that is how it felt on the ground. This is why Justice Minister Yassine Fall's words in Parliament carried so much weight. When she said Senegal arrests suspects and does not let them remain free, she wasn't just talking about abstract justice. She was pointing at Diagne in France, at a man Dakar wants back, while French courts hesitate. But the government also knew it was walking a tightrope. By arresting journalists, it had already drawn criticism. By escalating against France, it was now turning a domestic controversy into an international confrontation. The two were becoming inseparable. Inside Senegal, the debate grew sharper. Supporters of the government argued that no one, not even powerful media figures, should be above the law. Critics warned that financial charges were being used as tools to crush opposition voices. And in the middle of it all stood France, refusing to move fast enough for Dakar's liking, and thereby feeding every suspicion. This is how a legal request became political pressure, and how political pressure became a diplomatic crisis. But even this didn't fully explain why the new government was willing to take such a bold step against Paris. Because to understand that, you have to look beyond Diagne and beyond journalism, and into the deeper shift taking place in Senegal's relationship with France itself. So what has really changed between Dakar and Paris since last year? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. What has changed is power, and the way Senegal now wants to use it. Since the fall of former President Macky Sall in 2024, Dakar's tone toward Paris has hardened. Under Sall, Senegal was often described as one of France's closest allies in West Africa. Cooperation was smooth. Disagreements were handled quietly. France was not just a partner, it was a familiar presence in Senegal's politics, security ties, and diplomacy. That era is now over. The new leadership inherited a country where expectations had shifted. After years of seeing former colonial powers retain influence across Africa, voters wanted leaders who would speak more directly, defend national institutions, and stop accepting subtle hierarchies in relationships. This government did not come in promising to break with France, but it did promise that Senegal would no longer act like a junior partner. The extradition crisis fits perfectly into that new posture. For Dakar, this is not just about Diagne or one businessman. It is about how Senegal's justice system is treated abroad. When French courts delay and ask for more proof, the government hears something deeper. That Senegal's warrants are being viewed with doubt, that its courts are being weighed as less credible. Justice Minister Yassine Fall's speech reflected that mindset. Her words were not diplomatic, they were direct. Senegal does not leave suspects free. Senegal arrests when crimes are alleged. The implication was clear. If France hesitates, it is failing to show the same seriousness about justice. This tone would have been unthinkable a few years ago. Back then, Dakar would likely have waited, negotiated quietly, or sent another file. Now it chose escalation, suspension, public pressure. Across the country, this stance has found support among those who see it as long overdue. Many Senegalese view it as a moment of dignity, a signal that their country is ready to stand up to a former colonial power when it feels disrespected. For them, the freeze on extraditions is not reckless. It is symbolic. But others worry. They ask whether turning a legal disagreement into a political confrontation risks damaging an important relationship. France remains a major partner in trade, security, and diplomacy. A prolonged standoff could carry costs. Still, the government seems willing to take that risk, because in its eyes, this is about setting a precedent, about making it clear that cooperation with Senegal must be equal, not inherited from history. And that is why this dispute feels bigger than the names involved. It reflects a broader trend across Africa, where governments are increasingly challenging old power dynamics and demanding reciprocity instead of deference. But now that Dakar has made its move, the question is no longer about symbolism. It is about consequences. Because when legal cooperation is frozen and public lines are drawn, someone has to blink first. So what happens next, and who is under more pressure to give in, Senegal or France? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. France is the one feeling the pressure first, not because Senegal is more powerful, but because the suspension hits where cooperation actually matters. Extradition works on routine, on quiet trust, on the assumption that when one side asks, the other will at least engage seriously. By freezing all requests, Dakar has turned that routine into a problem Paris cannot ignore. Right now, 12 people wanted by French courts are in Senegal. Under normal circumstances, their cases would move forward through legal channels. Now, they are stuck. Senegal has made it clear. Nothing moves until France responds favorably to its own requests. This puts France in an uncomfortable position. Its courts value independence and slow procedure. But its diplomats now face a partner openly accusing France of double standards. From Paris's point of view, this is tricky. French judges cannot simply be ordered to approve extraditions because a foreign government is angry. That would undermine the idea of judicial independence. But at the same time, France cannot pretend this is only a legal issue anymore. Dakar has turned it into a political one. Behind closed doors, this creates tension. If France does nothing, the freeze could last months, even longer. That would weaken judicial cooperation and damage broader relations. If France pushes too hard on its courts, it risks accusations of political interference. Either way, Paris is forced to react. For Senegal, the pressure is different. Dakar has already made its statement. Backing down without results would look like weakness, especially after such a public declaration in parliament. The new leadership has tied this issue to sovereignty and dignity. That makes compromise harder. If France does not move, Senegal risks being stuck in a standoff of its own making. Inside Senegal, expectations are rising. Supporters of the government want to see results. Either Diagne returns, or at least clear movement from French courts. Critics are watching for any sign that the freeze hurts Senegal more than it helps. The government has little room to quietly retreat. And then there is the Diagne factor again. As long as he remains free in France, every delay reinforces the narrative that Paris is sheltering a government critic. Every day he stays there strengthens Dakar's justification for holding the line. This is how a legal dispute becomes a waiting game. Both sides are hoping the other will blink. Both sides are constrained by their own systems. Senegal by political promises, France by judicial process. And in the middle of this standoff lies the real risk, that what began as pressure becomes precedent. That cooperation between Dakar and Paris slowly erodes, not with a dramatic break, but with silence, delays, and frozen files. Which brings the story to its final edge. Because if neither side gives in easily, this is no longer about one case or one minister's speech. It becomes about the future of the entire relationship. So does this confrontation end with compromise? Or is Senegal and France heading toward a lasting rupture? If this confrontation ends, it will most likely end with compromise, but not without leaving scars. France is unlikely to suddenly rubber stamp extraditions just to satisfy Dakar. Its courts will move at their own pace, but Paris may quietly work to ensure that Senegal's requests are treated with urgency, that communication improves, and that the impression of disregard is corrected. Even small signals could give Dakar enough justification to claim progress and ease the freeze. For Senegal, compromise would mean lifting the suspension once France shows movement, even if the final legal outcomes are still pending. That would allow the government to say it defended its dignity without permanently damaging a key partnership. But if no such movement comes, Dakar seems prepared to let the standoff drag on. What is certain is that this dispute has already changed the tone of the relationship. The old habit of quiet alignment is gone. In its place is a more transactional approach, cooperation only if it is reciprocal. That shift will outlast this case, no matter how it ends. This episode also sends a message beyond France. It tells other partners that Senegal is willing to escalate publicly when it feels its institutions are not respected. For a new government trying to define itself, that matters. It builds an image of firmness at home, even if it complicates diplomacy abroad. For France, the lesson is equally clear. Influence based on history no longer carries the same weight. In a region where many countries are reassessing old relationships, delays that once passed quietly can now be interpreted as disrespect. Even when driven by legal process, they carry political meaning. And then there is Madiambal Diagne. As long as he remains in France, his case will hang over everything. If he is extradited, Dakar will claim victory. If he is not, his presence will remain a symbol of unresolved tension, a reminder of this moment when trust broke. So the real outcome may not be measured in court rulings alone, but in how both sides adjust after this crisis. Will they rebuild cooperation on clearer, more equal terms? Or will suspicion linger, turning every future request into another test of pride? Because one thing is already clear. Senegal has crossed a line it is unlikely to uncross. It has shown that it is ready to say no to France, openly and firmly, when it feels justice is not being served. And that leaves one final question echoing beyond this story. In a world where old hierarchies are fading, Our former powers ready to treat African states not as partners of convenience, but as equals in law, power, and respect. Let us know in the comment section. Will Africa force these nations to treat them with respect? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.